tea was a crisp spring morning in München. The scent of fresh bread lingered in the kitchen, and birds chirped outside the open window. Inside the Vogel household, however, the breakfast table was silent. Too silent. Lena Vogel, 16, sat upright in her chair. Her plate was set precisely, her cutlery aligned perfectly, and the butter on her Brötchen was spread with mechanical care. Her father, Herr Vogel, rustled the newspaper. Her mother, Frau Vogel, refilled his coffee without a word. Across the table, 10-year-old Felix fidgeted, but quickly stiffened under his father's sharp glance. There was no good morning, no small talk, only the ticking of the kitchen clock and the occasional clink of a spoon against porcelain. This wasn't new, of course. Lena had grown up with it, but lately, she had started to notice what was missing. She had stayed over at Greta Schumann's house the previous weekend. Greta's family was loud, full of laughter, and they actually spoke to one another. At first, Lena had found it overwhelming. Then, she had found it comforting. This morning, the contrast was jarring. "Felix," said Herr Vogel suddenly, eyes still on his paper. "Why did your report card mention a missing assignment?" Felix swallowed hard. I forgot to hand it in." Herr Vogel folded the paper and set it down, his eyes now sharp and cold. "There is no room for carelessness in this house. You will rewrite the assignment 3 times after school." "Yes, Papa," Felix replied quickly, voice trembling. Lena's hands tightened around her napkin. She glanced at her mother, who continued buttering her toast without so much as a blink. No support, no protest, just obedience. The breakfast resumed in silence. Later, as Lena tied her shoes at the doorway, her mother approached with a list of errands. Lena took it without argument. That, too, was expected. But as she walked to school, the sunlight falling gently over the red rooftops of München, something in her chest felt heavy. She remembered Greta's mum calling out, "Have a great day, girls," and handing them both apples. Lena could not remember the last time her mother said something kind without instruction behind it. She paused by the Isar River on her way, letting the sound of flowing water soothe her. She told herself her family was simply disciplined. Orderly. That was good, right? But deep down, a thought began to grow like a weed in her mind. Something wasn't quite right at home. The air was crisp that afternoon as Lena walked home past the stone facades and blooming chestnut trees of Altschwabing. School had felt unusually long, and her thoughts kept returning to Felix's face at breakfast, pale, stiff, afraid. When she stepped inside the house, it was quiet as always, the kind of silence that wrapped around her like a heavy curtain. She took off her shoes, placed them neatly by the door, and headed upstairs to check on Felix. His bedroom door was locked. She frowned. It was never locked. Not during the day. "Felix," she called softly, knocking twice. No answer. She pressed her ear to the wood. A faint rustling. Then silence. That evening, at dinner, the mood was sterile as ever. No mention was made of Felix's punishment. He was there, sitting straight, eyes red and distant. He didn't touch his food. Their parents said nothing. After the meal, Lena followed him quietly up the stairs. "Felix," she whispered, "are you all right?" He hesitated at his bedroom door. Then, without turning to face her, he muttered, "Don't ask questions, Lena." Her heart sank. She gently touched his arm, but he flinched and stepped away, disappearing behind the door. That night, Lena lay awake in bed, staring at the ornate ceiling. Moonlight crept across her wall, but it brought no comfort. Only shadows. She remembered once when she was 8, she had spilled water on one of her father's books. It was an accident, but the punishment was a week without speaking privileges. No one, not even her mother, had said a word to her. She had cried herself to sleep every night in silence. Now, years later, the memory felt heavier. The next morning before school, she tried again. "Felix," she said at the foot of the stairs, "tell me what happened." He looked around nervously, then whispered, "You shouldn't ask. You know how Papa gets." "But he scared you," Lena replied. Felix nodded once, his voice low. He says if we shame the family, we become strangers. Strangers. The word echoed in Lena's mind. As she walked to school, she passed the Victualian marked stalls of fresh produce, smiling vendors, the hum of everyday life. It all felt so distant, so foreign. She met Greta at the entrance of the school. Her friend greeted her with a warm hug and a silly joke about their strict literature teacher. But Lena couldn't laugh. "Hey," Greta said gently. "Everything okay?" Lena smiled faintly. "Just tired." But she wasn't tired. She was starting to realize something was deeply wrong. Lena could not shake the unease. At school, the teachers' voices blurred together, and every clock tick felt like a drumbeat in her chest. By the time she returned home that afternoon, she knew she had to find answers. Felix was at violin practice with their father. That meant his room would be empty. She hesitated at his bedroom door. Then, after checking the hallway, she turned the handle. Unlocked. The room smelled faintly of polish and damp paper. Books were lined perfectly on shelves. His bed was neatly made. Everything was in place, almost too perfect. Lena stepped inside, closing the door behind her. She began searching carefully. Drawers. Under the bed. Between books. Nothing. Then she noticed a floorboard under the window that didn't sit flush with the others. Her heart quickened. She knelt and pressed it. It gave way with a quiet creak. Inside, wrapped in an old cloth, was a thin black journal. Lena opened it. The first pages were innocent, sketches of birds, a list of favorite composers' short poems. But as she flipped further, the tone changed. He watches from the hallway at night. Papa says Mama is weak, that feelings are shameful. I woke up with a bruise on my back and don't remember how it got there. Lena's breath caught. He said if I ever tell anyone, he'll send me away like he did with Carl. Carl. Their cousin. The one who went to live with relatives in Hamburg. No one had seen him in years. She turned to the last entry. It was dated just 2 weeks ago. I dream of a door that leads outside this house. But I never find a key. A creak in the hallway made her snap the book shut. Footsteps. She slipped the journal back into its hiding place, pushed the floorboard down, and stood up just as the door opened. It was her mother. Lena, she said in her usual soft tone. What are you doing in here? Lena forced a smile. Just checking if Felix needed anything. Her mother's eyes lingered too long. Then she nodded. Come help me with dinner. That evening, Lena peeled potatoes in silence while her mind raced. What happened to Carl? What exactly had Felix gone through? And what did her mother know? The answers were buried beneath the quiet perfection of their home. And now Lena had begun to dig. The following night, Lena waited until the entire house had settled into stillness. Her parents had gone to bed after their usual cup of chamomile tea, and Felix was snoring softly across the hall. She crept from her bed, pulled on her cardigan, and padded silently toward the staircase. But she did not go down. She turned to the attic. The upper floor had always been off-limits. Her father said it was unsafe, filled with mold and old insulation. But Lena had long suspected that was just another of his carefully spun lies. The wooden stairs groaned under her weight. At the top, the attic door stood with a rusted bolt. Surprisingly, it wasn't locked. She opened it slowly, the hinges squealing softly. Dust filled her nose as she stepped inside. It was cold, and the only light came from the moonlight seeping through the small window. Boxes, old trunks, forgotten furniture. The smell of mothballs and secrets. She didn't know what she was looking for. Then she heard it. A voice. Very faint. A whisper. At first, she thought it was the wind. But then she heard her name. Lena. She froze, heart pounding. The voice came from behind the far wall, a section of timber that seemed newer than the rest. It was covered in peeling floral wallpaper, and unlike the other walls, it had no shelves or hooks. She approached cautiously and placed her ear against it. There was definitely someone on the other side. A whimper, then silence. Lena searched the edges of the wall, her fingers tracing every seam. There, a gap just wide enough to slip in a nail. She found an old screwdriver on a nearby shelf and pried at the edge. A panel shifted slightly. Her breath caught as she widened the opening and peered inside. It was a hidden crawl space, and in it, barely lit by the sliver of moonlight, sat a girl. Pale, thin, eyes wide with terror. Not much older than Felix. Lena gasped. "Who are you?" The girl didn't answer at first. Her lips trembled, but no sound came. Then finally, a whisper. "My name is Carl." Lena stumbled backward, the screwdriver clattering to the wooden floor. The name echoed in her head.
Carl.
But that was a boy's name. She looked again. The figure was undeniably feminine. Delicate hands, long hair, a tattered nightgown. Yet the fear in her eyes was unmistakably real. Are you Carl?" Lena asked again, voice trembling. The girl nodded slowly. "Yes, at least that is what they called me." Lena's skin prickled. "What do you mean?" Carl drew her knees up to her chest, hugging them tightly. "They said I was wrong, that I was broken. They locked me here because I kept saying I wasn't a boy." Lena felt her stomach twist. She glanced behind her, half expecting footsteps on the attic stairs. But there was only silence. "How long have you been here?" "I don't know," Carl whispered. "It feels like forever. They bring food sometimes. I think they used to call me their daughter." Lena's head spun. Her parents had never mentioned another child. Only once had her mother said, in a moment of wine-soaked honesty, that they had lost a baby long ago. But this wasn't a ghost. This was a living person. Hidden. Forgotten. Erased. "They'll come if they hear us," Carl said, her voice urgent now. "Please don't tell them you saw me." Lena nodded, overwhelmed. "I won't. I promise." She stepped back, closed the panel gently, and turned to leave, her heart racing so loudly she was sure the whole house could hear it. When she reached her room, she locked the door and stared at the ceiling until dawn.
She didn't sleep.
She couldn't. Everything she thought she knew about her family was cracking apart, and beneath it lay something rotten. The morning light streamed through the curtains, but it brought no comfort. Lena moved through the house like a ghost, her body present, but her mind elsewhere. At breakfast, her mother placed a boiled egg in front of her with a smile that did not reach her eyes. Her father read the newspaper, nodding along to something only he seemed to understand. Felix chewed noisily on toast, oblivious. Lena could barely swallow. Every sound, every movement felt amplified. The house felt smaller. The walls heavier. She noticed things now. The way her father's eyes flinched every time someone mentioned the past. How her mother's hands trembled when she handled the family photo albums. And the photo, the one on the hallway table, the old family portrait from years ago. Her father, younger, her mother holding a toddler. She had seen it 1,000 times. But now, she stared at it closer. There was a strange blur on the far right side. At first, she had always thought it was a trick of the light or damage from age. But now she saw it for what it was. A figure had been scratched out. Deliberately. A child. Roughly Lena's age at the time. Her throat tightened. She waited until the others were distracted, then slipped the photo from its frame and turned it over. On the back, in faint pencil, was a name.
Carla.
Not Carl. Carla. She rushed back upstairs, locking her bedroom door behind her. Her hands trembled as she laid the photo on her bed. Her mind was spinning. They hadn't just hidden Carla away. They had tried to erase her. Lena suddenly felt watched, like the house itself was aware of what she knew. A soft knock on the door made her jump. It was her mother. "Lena, Schatz, are you all right?" Lena stuffed the photo under her pillow. "Yes," she said, voice strained. "Just tired." There was a pause. Her mother's voice was calm, but oddly hollow. "Let me know if anything is troubling you. Anything at all." Lena could hear the weight beneath those words. Not concern. Warning. That night, Lena could not bear to sleep. Every creak of the house made her jump. Every shadow danced with meaning. The silence was too loud, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. She lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, Carla's name repeating in her mind like a warning bell. Something was wrong. Deeply, horribly wrong. And she could no longer pretend otherwise. At midnight, she slipped from her bed and tiptoed to the attic stairs. But instead of climbing up, she crouched down, lowering herself onto the cold floor just beside the cupboard, where the trapdoor had been. She placed her ear to the boards. Nothing. No breathing. No whispers. No Carla. Lena's heart dropped. She opened the panel, peering into the darkness with a flashlight. The space was empty. No blankets. No broken mirror. No girl. It was as if Carla had never existed. Lena crawled inside, touching the bare wood where Carla had once sat. Her fingers brushed against something cold, a small, rusted hairpin, wedged into the crack between the boards. She pocketed it and backed out, heart hammering. Where had Carla gone? And why would her parents take her away now? The next morning, she approached her mother in the kitchen. "Mama," Lena asked carefully, "did I ever have a sister?" Her mother froze, hand still on the kettle. Then slowly she turned and smiled, too wide, too bright. "No, Liebchen. Why would you think such a thing?" Lena blinked, the lie burning into her skin. "I just thought I remembered someone." "Well," her mother said, laughing lightly, "you've always had a vivid imagination." That night, Lena waited until everyone had gone to sleep. She took the hairpin and the scratched photo and tiptoed to her father's study, the one room they were never allowed in without permission. She found the key tucked above the doorframe, just like Felix had once said. The door creaked open. Dust floated in the air. Stacks of boxes lined the walls, old books, yellowed papers. And in the corner, a wooden trunk.
Locked.
Lena forced it open with the hairpin. The lock gave way with a quiet snap. Inside, she found files, medical reports, psychological assessments, all bearing the name Carla Gruber, and a photo, a school portrait. Carla's face, beaming.
Alive. Whole.
Tears filled Lena's eyes. It had all been real. They had lied. About everything. Lena sat on the study floor, the papers spread out before her like a map of buried truth. Each file detailed Carla's mental health struggles, her behavioral patterns, even notes from therapy sessions. But one word kept appearing: schizoaffective. The label meant nothing to Lena at first, but the further she read, the clearer it became. Carla had been ill. Not dangerous. Not a monster. Just sick. And misunderstood. She found another envelope, labeled Gruber Family Records. Inside, she discovered something that made her blood run cold. A handwritten letter, dated nearly 10 years ago. It was addressed to the Jugendant, the youth welfare office, and signed by her father. It requested that Carla be permanently removed from public systems due to her condition, to protect the family's privacy. There was no mention of treatment, no request for support, just removal. Silence. A burial of the truth. Lena stared at her father's signature. It was cold, calculated. That was when she realized it wasn't just neglect. It was erasure. She placed the documents back in the box, her hands trembling. As she turned to leave, her father stood in the doorway. He said nothing at first, just looked at her. And in his eyes, there was no anger, no fear, only weariness. "You should not have seen that," he said quietly. Lena didn't move. "You lied," she whispered. "All these years." Her father nodded slowly.
Yes.
"To protect you." "No," she said, her voice rising. "You did it to protect yourself." He walked over, calm as ever, and gently took the box from her hands. "I knew this day would come," he murmured. "I had hoped it wouldn't." Lena stepped back. "What did you do to her?" she asked. His eyes didn't waver. "We did what we had to." Lena turned and fled the room. Lena spent days pacing her small room, the weight of the secret pressing down on her. She knew she had to confront her mother next, but the thought filled her with dread. She needed answers. One afternoon, while her father was away at work, Lena found her mother sitting quietly in the garden. The sun was fading, casting long shadows across the lawn. "Mama," Lena began carefully, "why did we have to hide Carla?" Why did you say she never existed? Her mother looked up, eyes glassy with tears. I wanted to protect you, she whispered. Your father and I, we were scared. Carla was suffering so much, and the world is cruel. We didn't know how to help her. But hiding her, erasing her, did that help? Lena's voice cracked. It only made her disappear. Her mother shook her head. I know. It was wrong. We were lost, and we made terrible choices. Lena sat beside her, a flood of emotions rising. I want to find her, she said firmly. To know what happened. To bring her home. Her mother reached out, taking Lena's hand. Be careful, Lena. Some truths are dangerous. Lena nodded, determination blazing in her eyes. That night, she began to search for any clue beyond the house. Old neighbors, distant relatives, anyone who might know what happened to Carla after she was taken away. Her journey was only just beginning. Lena's search led her to an old woman living on the outskirts of München. The woman's name was Frau Schmidt, a neighbor from long ago who remembered Carla well. She was a bright girl, Frau Schmidt said softly, but troubled. Your parents did what they thought was best, but they did not understand her pain. Lena listened as Frau Schmidt told stories of Carla's days in a small care home, her struggles and moments of clarity. She never gave up hope, the woman said. She always believed someone would come for her. With a heavy heart, Lena thanked Frau Schmidt and left, clutching a worn photograph of Carla smiling. Returning home, Lena confronted her father again. I know where she was, Lena said quietly, and what she endured. Her father sighed deeply. She was part of our family, even if hidden. Lena looked at him, her voice steady. I will not let her be forgotten anymore. The family's secrets had been uncovered, and though the scars remained, Lena knew healing could begin.